We'll give it till 11. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start here, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're happy to have with us Bridget Whitford from Cleveland Hearing and Speech. Some of you might have seen Bridget or Karen with us in the past for previous presentations to Kendal at Home. My name is Marla Gordon. I'm the Director of Clinical Services here at Kendal at Home. And before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items. If you have questions, and you probably will throughout the presentation, you can click, there's a little hand at the bottom of your screen. You can raise your hand and we can unmute you so that you can ask your question. Or you can feel free to click chat or Q&A at the bottom of your screen and type in those questions, and we'll read those to Bridget so that she can address them that way as well. Also on the bottom of your screen, there is a little button that is a little square with 2 C's in it, and it says show captions underneath it. You can click on that button and read the closed captioning for this presentation as well. So, all right. Bridget is here to discuss the new guidelines with over-the-counter hearing aids, and I know there's a lot of questions from members and prospective members about these changes. So we're happy to have you here this morning to give us the newest and latest information.
Thank you so much, Marla. I appreciate being able to be here. As Marla said, my name is Bridget Whitford, and I am Director of Hearing Services at Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center. We have been really thrilled with the over-the-counter legislation because what it does on a national level is it increases accessibility to hearing aids, and treatment for hearing loss, and that is what we want. So I'm glad to be able to be here. I can't see any of you, so if you do have any questions, please do raise your hand so Marla can let you pop in and ask a question, because I know sometimes you have a question and I would like to hear them. It helps the conversation move along. So don't be shy. You can either chat it or you can raise your hand. So let's just get started. So over-the-counter hearing aids is a new category of hearing aids. It got final approval from the Food and Drug Administration in October of 2022, but it has been in the works for quite a while. Actually, President Obama really kind of got the ball rolling. As I said, the idea behind it is that it will increase access to hearing aids. And the ways in which you can do that is, number one, it's going to be easier, just like you can go anywhere and buy them, but it's also intended to bring the price point for hearing aids down. So I want to just clarify some of the terminology. You may hear the terminology over-the-counter hearing aids. You may also see, so OTC, over-the-counter. You may also see them referred to as DTC, which is direct to consumers, or self-fitting hearing aids. And essentially those terminologies all essentially mean the same thing. And that is that you would be working directly, purchasing a product and not having the use of a professional. So let me talk a little bit about how the over-the-counter process is different from a traditional hearing aid model. And actually the new traditional hearing aid model they're referring to as prescriptive, so prescription hearing aids. Okay, so the first one, and what I would consider to be the most controversial in terms of how professionals like myself think about it, is that no hearing test is required. So that is the first thing, and that increases access because you can just purchase the hearing aid without having any type of idea of what your hearing loss is like, other than what you feel like your hearing is. So you can purchase from anyone. You'll see them on Amazon, Best Buy, any of the big box stores, and not the big box stores in terms of, like, you might know that Costco sells hearing aids where you can see a hearing aid dealer and or audiologist there and kind of get prescription hearing aids, but actually just at a big box store where you would buy them off the shelf. The biggest difference, as I said, and I'll continue to say, is that there's no licensed professional involved. Okay. That can be an issue if you run into any problems. And the other kind of question mark that is still remaining to be seen a little bit is returns. If you purchase something, your ability to return the product. My understanding is that the returns are going to be determined on a state-by-state basis. And certainly any returns that you make of any product that you purchase will be subject to whatever the manufacturer, like whatever product you bought, what they will allow for returns. So, for example, there are some companies that may distribute their product in a variety of ways. They may distribute their product at Best Buy, and they may also have products that you could get at an audiologist's office. If you purchase your hearing aid at Best Buy, you are not able to return that product at the audiologist's office, even though they may sell the same product. So it kind of makes sense in that when you think about it, if you went to the store and you purchased a box of batteries, you could not return that box of batteries to any old store that sells batteries. You would have to return it to the store that you bought the batteries from. And so hearing aids will be similar, is my understanding. And the length of time that you have to complete a return may be determined by the state, with some states requiring a return period and others potentially not. So that is my understanding. That's been a little bit of a gray area in the process. Let me hold on a second here. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So over-the-counter hearing aids, who are they intended for? Okay, that is a question. Who is the market for over-the-counter hearing aids? The first is that they're intended only for individuals over the age of 18. So they're not appropriate for children. They are also intended for people who perceive their hearing loss as being mild to moderate. Okay, so the amplification that you get from an over-the-counter hearing aid is going to be amplification that may be sufficient for somebody with a mild to moderate hearing loss, but not for somebody with more significant hearing loss. And on the screen here, I do have a picture of an audiogram. An audiogram is essentially the graph that we graph out hearing loss if we were to do a hearing test. Across the top is the different frequencies, from low frequencies like a beep to high frequencies like beep, and from soft sounds which are at a 0 all the way down to really loud sounds like at 120 decibels loud. And so if you have normal hearing, you can see all of your responses to the different pitches or frequencies would be across the top of the graph and the very soft sounds. And as you go down the graph, we would need to make the beeps louder for you to hear them in a hearing test, or you wouldn't be able to hear soft sounds out in the real world, if you will. You can see that only people that fall between 0 and 40 decibels, or 0 and 50 decibels really, for mild to moderate hearing loss are the type of candidates for over-the-counter hearing aids. People that need the sounds to be made louder before they could hear them, that fall more in the moderately to severe or even profound hearing loss range, they would not be appropriate. Over-the-counter hearing aids would not be appropriate for that degree of hearing loss, and they're not intended for that degree of hearing loss. The other group of people that these hearing aids are not intended for are people who have any medical concerns or warning signs of a medical concern. So any ear deformity, any fluid, pus or blood, any hearing loss or ringing in your ear that is significantly different from one ear to the other ear, any pain or discomfort in your ear, any history of excessive wax or feeling that something is in your ear, I guess I repeated that, pain or discomfort in your ear, any sudden, quickly worsening or fluctuating hearing loss. So if you wake up one day and all of a sudden you can't hear, that is a medical emergency. That is not something where you would go and purchase an over-the-counter hearing aid. And also anybody who has any severe vertigo or severe dizziness. So vertigo is that feeling of the room spinning around you, or severe dizziness. Any of those medical warning signs would be a sign that there could be potentially a larger concerning medical concern with your hearing loss, and you would not want to just go purchase an over-the-counter hearing aid. You would want to seek either medical help from your primary care doctor or an ear, nose, and throat doctor, or at bare minimum to go to see an audiologist, but you would not just go purchase something over the counter. One of the concerns that we have to be aware of is that although these are what the process is intended for, anybody could just go buy these over-the-counter products. So if you did have one of these things wrong with you, you could still go and buy it. So that is one of the safeguards that having hearing aids be prescriptive kind of stops that from happening. And so that's just a risk point, is that somebody may not understand that they aren't supposed to purchase hearing aids if any of these type of conditions are going on. There are warning signs on the boxes of over-the-counter hearing aids, but of course you have to heed the warning signs. So so that is a little bit of how the process, or who the hearing aids would be appropriate for. Now, how do prescriptive hearing aids differ from over-the-counter hearing aids? And my answer to that is much remains to be seen. This really just began in terms of products being available over the counter in October. Now, you might say to yourself, and I say to myself, yeah, but I've been seeing ads for over-the-counter hearing aids for years. Saturday morning, Sunday morning, I'm watching Meet the Press, and there's always an advertise about $19.99, and you could buy a hearing aid for $19.99. Those products previous to this legislation were, if you read the fine print, intended for people who had normal hearing, and they were personal sound amplifier products. They were not intended for people with hearing loss. It was just a small caveat, and many companies kind of were selling things they probably shouldn't have been selling. And I would say the majority of those products were junk. There wasn't really anything on the market that was of any value previous to this legislation going out. I say that with a broad stroke, but I think it's a pretty fair assessment. Now that we have actual over-the-counter hearing aids that are truly designed for people with hearing loss, I think that we're going to see better products out on the market, and the competitive spirit will kick in, the American way, and companies will try to outdo each other, both in terms of the value and the worthiness of their product and having it be a good product, and also the price point. We're waiting to see a little bit about what a big question I always get is like, what are over-the-counter hearing aids going to look like? And we'll talk about that a little bit, but at this point, any company can get into the business. So it all depends on what they bring to market. And we are still seeing companies, I mean, we're in its infancy. So companies are going to begin bringing products to market. And so what they look like, what they sound like, what they cost, some of that remains to be seen. And I think that that's going to evolve over time. That's true of traditional hearing aids. What they've looked like and what they've cost and what they can do has evolved over time. And this is going to happen in even faster ways with the over-the-counter market. I think that hopefully the intent is that the quality products at a reasonable price will rise up and the junk will fall away. Some trends that we are seeing so far is that it seems that almost all of over-the-counter hearing aids are sold binaurally, which means that they're in packages of two, one for the right ear and one for the left ear. And it does not seem like there's many products that you can buy for just one ear. I've mentioned that because that's important. It's important in a couple different ways. Number one, it makes sense because one of the warning signs, as you might recall, is that if your hearing loss is significantly different from one side to the other, then over-the-counter products aren't really intended for you. So, they being sold binaurally kind of makes sense. However, let's say you bought the hearing aids and you lost one, or that would probably be the best example, is that you lost one or damaged one and you wanted to buy a replacement. That seems to be a little bit more difficult from what I'm seeing on the market. Secondly, that the price point is highly, highly variable at this point. On these next slides, I'm going to share a little bit, but I'm seeing anything from $29 to about $3,000 for a pair of hearing aids. I would say that another trend that we're seeing is that the more reputable options, and that should be could be described as more of like a stripped down version of prescription hearing aids. So many of the manufacturers that make traditional or prescription hearing aids are getting into the market of over-the-counter hearing aids. And what they're describing to us is that the version that they're going to be selling direct to consumer or over the counter is going to be similar to their prescription hearing aids, but a little stripped down. So for example, they may only have one color available. If you choose a prescription hearing aid, you can choose essentially colors that match skin tone with a variety of different skin tones. There's silver and gold and platinum and sometimes fun colors for like in children, pinks and blues and reds and all sorts of different options available for what they might look like. And in the over-the-counter version from these same companies, they're really only offering it in one color, or they may only have one size or model available. And the features that are on the hearing aids might be more limited. And so I stripped down would be kind of the best way I would describe what we're seeing as being out there. Okay, hold on a second. Here we go. So I just did, in preparing for this talk, I went online and I was like, let's see what's happening, just as what's out there at Best Buy, what's out there at Amazon, what are people selling? Because really, at being an audiologist, I have a little bit of an inside scoop in terms of hearing what's going on in the industry, but this is an over-the-counter product. So like I said, any company can get into it. Anybody can start selling. They can sell in anywhere, any distribution channels that they want. But these pictures that I'm showing here are from mainly Amazon and Best Buy and Walmart. So I thought those are kind of big places. And you can see, I'm seeing them from this first one, the $30 was $29.99 for this product that looks pretty rudimentary. When I'm looking at that product, the $30 one on the screen, I think that might not be so comfortable to wear. It's kind of a one size fits most type of a model. And you can see it's pretty basic. It looks like it has an on-off switch. To me, that's probably what we've been seeing on the market for the last few years in terms of a personal sound amplifier product. Some of the bigger companies, if you look here, the ones, if you jump across, the one that's worth $2,550, the Eargo 6, that is a company that has popped into the market for over-the-counter hearing aids. And they seem to be relatively reputable. You can see the $999 ones are Sony products. That's a name that consumers would know for sound products. But those price points are not inexpensive. You're looking at from $500 to $1,200 per ear. And I mention this because some of our prescriptive hearing aids also fall in a similar price range. So there is some overlap in terms of price of over-the-counter hearing aids to prescriptive. We can also see in terms of when we're looking at what do they look like, it looks like there are some in the ear type models. So those are the ones on the top row. Everything that you would have in the product would go into your ear. And then there's some that I would describe as a more of behind the ear type model. And those are ones that there's a piece, all hearing aids have to have some type of, or all even over the counter hearing aids have to have something that holds them in the ear and takes the sound into the ear. But the actual electronics and amplifiers hang behind the ear. And so you can see that over the counter products seem to be available in both models. They seem to be available in a variety of kind of color assortments a little bit. Although the blue was the only real color I saw. They seem to be available with batteries and also as rechargeable options. So many of these especially the ones in the bottom row, were available rechargeable as opposed to disposable batteries. Again, the price points really range in the $400 to $500 each hearing aid up to $1,500 for each hearing aid. You can see that $3,000 one also has Bluetooth features available. So that would allow you to, that's that little blue Bluetooth designation there tells us that that product has Bluetooth available. So that may mean that you can stream to your phone. You could watch, you could watch a movie from your phone or your iPad, as long as you were able to pair your electronic device that you owned to the actual product, to the over-the-counter hearing aid product. Now keep in mind that when you're doing this in an over-the-counter product, you are doing this independently. And so you are on your own to figure out how to pair it and what features are available and what features that you want out of a product and what features you're willing to pay for in a product. And that you're doing on your own without the help of a licensed professional. The really wonderful thing about these products is all of these products that I'm showing here, I was able to order online and have delivered to me with my Prime membership through Amazon or with my Best Buy membership. And I was able, or Best Buy, just, making an account and able to have it to me in just a matter of a couple days to my doorstep for me to work with on my own. So convenience and accessibility, which was kind of the intent of this over-the-counter product, was absolutely there. It also, the price point is lower than you'll likely see for some prescription products. Now, I would argue that the price point for prescription hearing aids includes the professional expertise of the doctor of audiology and or hearing instrument specialist that you might be seeing. And so when you take that price, if you take that out of it, then the price is probably pretty competitive for the actual product. Okay, so what we're seeing is that some people might choose to buy a product like this, but then need some assistance in helping set it up or figuring out how to use it or understanding all the features available to it. So then they would pay a professional. You could go in and you could come to, let's say, Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center and pay for our professional services. And when you add those two things together, I'm not as convinced that some of these higher end or more reputable over-the-counter hearing aids are going to be a large cost savings. So that still remains to be seen. Like I said, as the products are on the market, as we see how easy they are to use and how easy consumers are able to navigate them on their own, that part still does remain to be seen a little bit. Okay, so this graph has a lot of information, and it's some of the things that we've already talked about, but I thought it was a nice graphic. I got it from the American Speech Language Hearing Association's website, and I thought that it did a nice comparison between over-the-counter hearing aids and prescription hearing aids, and where some of them where there may be some overlap, where they're both kind of doing the same thing. So I'm going to just go through this really quickly. Over the first line, over-the-counter hearing aids, you fit them by yourself versus a licensed audiologist must fit prescription hearing aids. And so those are just two, that's the most basic difference between the two. When we look at price, the numbers that we're hearing nationally, I showed you that range, but what we're hearing is that the average price is about $1,000 per pair for hearing aids that are over the counter versus the prices for prescription hearing aids. They range from about $1,000 per pair up to about $7,000 per pair. So the price difference is much greater in over the counter products. They can go much higher, and I would say that they would be your more deluxe model, if you will. You're not likely, at least so far, we have not seen your ultra deluxe models being sold in an over-the-counter product. Many times because some of those advanced features may need a licensed professional to help really understand and maximize the value. And also because, I mean, quite likely if you were selling $7,000 over-the-counter hearing aids, people would likely balk at that, why a company would not likely do that. In terms of the range, over-the-counter hearing aids, as I said, 18 and above. But prescription hearing aids is for all ages, but including 18 and above. So there is some overlap there. So over-the-counter hearing aids, your hearing loss is based on your perception of it, and you approximate it either through you just feeling that way, and some of these products may have kind of a self-help tool when you're fitting it, like, does this beep now sound loud to you, soft to you, something like that, that you're going to kind of self-assess yourself, but it isn't a actual full hearing test. Versus if you get prescription hearing aids, you will have to go through the process of having a full hearing test that gives you a true sense of where your thresholds are across all of those different frequencies. The testing requirements are different. However, in the end, when you determine that you have a mild to moderate hearing loss, the severity of hearing loss that we can fit, there is that overlap that people with mild to moderate hearing loss can either choose over-the-counter hearing aids or prescriptive hearing aids. There is an overlap there. The design of the hearing aids. For over-the-counter hearing aids, we're at this point seeing a one size fits most. You saw from the pictures of those that many of them have like a little rubbery tip on them that you can, maybe they might send like a couple different tip sizes in the box. That's one thing that we're seeing, but it's kind of like what you get in the box. You open it up and you hope that it fits your ear. And it's one size fits most, versus if you go the route of prescription hearing aids. If you were to get a hearing aid that went all in your ear, like that top row of pictures that we saw, we would make that custom for your ear. So we would make a mold and an impression, and we would make that to fit the shape of your ear. And for the ones on the bottom that hang behind your ear, you may have some non-custom options for that. Where you just have one size fits most, and you may get that in a prescriptive hearing aid. But if it's not fitting you well, we could then pivot to a custom piece that would be where we would make a mold of your ear, and we would design that custom piece to have it hold it into your ear. So there is some overlap, but I would say the majority of products through a prescription are custom products that they would fit your designed for your ear, versus a one size fits most for over the counter. The return policy, like I said, and I think this might be changing in some of the final law, is that it's determined by the state, and the returns are determined by the state. And my understanding is that in the state of Ohio that there is going to be a return policy. I believe that it's 30 days for over-the-counter products. Return policies for prescription hearing aids, it's mandated in most states, and in Ohio it's at least a 30-day right to return period in Ohio for your prescription hearing aids. In terms of verification and whether or not we check to make sure that once you fit the hearing aid that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, for over-the-counter hearing aids there is no real verification of that. For prescription hearing aids, a reputable audiologist would do real ear measurements and other maybe questionnaires and such to ensure that what they are doing in your ear is what you need it to be doing. So real ear measurements are something that we at Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center do routinely for all of our hearing aid fittings. And that is to ensure it's essentially putting a little microphone down in your ear while you're wearing your hearing aid to take measurements to ensure that the amplification you're getting matches what we want you to get based on the hearing test that we did. And so that would be something that would be different with over-the-counter hearing aids, in that you would not have that process. There would be no verification. Again, hearing loss in terms of severity, it's only for perceived mild to moderate hearing loss, versus a prescription here over-the-counter is prescription hearing aids would be available for all degrees of hearing loss. And the selection process in terms of which one's best for me, that is really, I have a whole hour-long talk that we do on which hearing aid is best for me. I think we may have done that for Kendal, that you may be able to find that one in the library, but people ask me which hearing aid's best. And the way I always answer that question is that there is no best hearing aid. There is no, it's like when I say to people, what's the best car? And somebody might say, oh, I don't know, a Rolls Royce is the best car. Okay. And then arguably that's a pretty darn good car, I would think. But I have a family of 7 people in my household. So a Rolls Royce, I'm guessing they don't make a minivan version of it. And so for me, that Rolls Royce, although as lovely as it might be, it may not be the best car for me and my situation. And so finding the best product for your specific situation is really important. And in the over-the-counter model, that is something that you would be selecting that process by yourself. You'd be going online or and most of them are online. I'm not seeing a lot in the stores, but they may be in the stores. And so you might look at the shelf, or you might go online and you would determine which product was best for you. Versus in a prescription hearing aid model, you would work with the healthcare professional that you were seeing, either the hearing aid dealer or the audiologist, and they would help you determine what features and products might best meet your need based on you describing to them how you spend your day. I spend my day home alone watching TV most of the day. That is a very different need for technology or need for hearing aid features than somebody that says, well, I still work. I work full-time, I work part-time, I volunteer, I go to lots of community events, I love to go to the theater, I go out to eat 3 times a week. Those two situations are very different, and determining what features that you need can sometimes be overwhelming. I know I feel that same way every time I go to buy a microwave or a mattress or things like that, where I think I don't know what I need. And so the prescription hearing aid process has the licensed professional helping you through that, versus the where you could be more independent and determine on your own with the over-the-counter process. So I know that slide had like lots of information, but it kind of just gives you the difference of what you might be taking on with over the counter versus what you're taking on with a prescriptive model of hearing aids. And there is some overlap between them. And I think, though, that the important thing to remember is there isn't one necessarily better model. I will say that I think this is my bias. I think that people who are savvy shoppers and likely have some technology savviness also is probably going to be the person that is going to do better with an over-the-counter hearing aid, because there's so much independence involved and you're kind of on your own doing it. If you're somebody who needs a lot of hand holding, if you're like me, where back in the day I could not figure out how to set up my VCR and how to tape record a show, I was unable to do that. I may not be the person that was going to be really great with this. But if you're somebody who's like, pops open that box on Christmas morning and you set up all your technology, and by 10 a.m. everything is set up and ready to go for your family of all the things that you bought, then maybe you really would be somebody who would be a really good candidate for over-the-counter hearing aids. So that's something you just might want to think about and give an honest look at yourself in terms of what you're willing or wanting to take on. Okay. So I talked a little bit about this. So what does Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center suggest in terms of over-the-counter? The first thing is, even though it's not required, we would suggest that you obtain a hearing test before you purchase an over-the-counter hearing aid. It's not required by law, but what it will, I think the number one thing that it will do is it will ensure that you have the type of hearing loss that is appropriate for an over-the-counter hearing aid. So what people perceive as their hearing loss and what type of hearing loss they actually have can often be very different. So people might think, and in both ways, I've seen it go both ways. I've seen more common people say, oh, I just have a mild or just a little bit of hearing loss. And then we do a hearing test and it's like, well, yeah, you've got a pretty significant hearing loss. In fact, in the higher frequencies, you've got a severe hearing loss. And so those people, they may think they just have a mild hearing loss and that over-the-counters would be appropriate. And in fact, they may be under-amplified with over-the-counter hearing aids, and they may not get the benefit that they actually really need. And it may lead to having a sour taste. Hearing aids, they don't do anything. They didn't even help me. Well, that was because they really weren't appropriate for the degree of hearing loss you had. It could also work the other way. I have had people that come to me, and my sister-in-law is such a great example. She's always like, I can't hear anything. I know I have a hearing loss. And every time I test her, her hearing is in the normal range. She might be starting to have some processing or aging a little bit. And so she may struggle with her processing and background noise, but her actual hearing, she can still hear the sounds. And so amplifying is not necessarily going to be the answer for her. And so if she perceived and thought, oh, I think I've got a mild to moderate hearing loss and I'm going to get over-the-counter hearing aids, and in fact she has normal hearing, then that may not be providing her benefit that she might have thought she would get. So so it can kind of happen either way. So doing a hearing test, even though it's not required, would be my recommendation. Again, I did just talk about this. Be realistic regarding your ability to handle over-the-counter hearing aids. Somebody who's tech savvy, that is going to likely be important. My guess is that many of these hearing aids are going to interface with a smartphone and setting it up. So at least some of the more reputable ones, that is my guess, is that they are going to be set based on pairing it with a smartphone and an app. If you have dexterity issues, significant dexterity issues, you have significant vision issues, and or you know that your ears are really small or really large, and you're likely not going to be in the one size fits most category, then it may not be as realistic for you to pursue over the counters, or you may not have as much success. And then most importantly, the one that I really want to talk about that I think is really important is to check your insurance. Don't pay for over-the-counter hearing aids if you have hearing aid coverage for prescription benefits and for prescription hearing aids, and you could get hearing aids at low cost or no cost to you. I would say in that case, if you have insurance that covers it, and Medicaid, which is for people who are on limited incomes in Ohio, does cover hearing aids, and many of the Medicare Advantage plans also have hearing aid benefits. So if you have a traditional Medicare, just straight up Medicare at this time, it's they do not cover hearing aids, and so you would not have hearing aid benefits. But if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, there's a really reasonable likelihood that you might have a hearing aid benefit, so you should check that. If that's the case, you're most likely going to be able to get hearing aids at no cost and or at least as low cost as a hearing aid. And you then would have the bonus of having the quality product with the licensed professional. Now, on the flip side, you may not be able to get it in your Amazon delivery cart delivery tomorrow. So if time is of the essence, or you say, well, I know I have insurance, but I still want to spend money because I need it tomorrow and I want it right away, or I'm out in a rural area, or I can't leave the house and I can't find a home health care provider for hearing aids, that might be the reason why you don't use your insurance. But for many people, checking your insurance, that's really important. I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to that have gone places. For example, you can buy hearing aids at Costco, not over-the-counter hearing aids, but prescriptive hearing aids at Costco, but they don't bill insurance, but they do have very competitive pricing. And so people say, oh, I bought my hearing aids at Costco, but then it turned out that they actually had insurance, and had they gone to a place like Cleveland Hearing Speech Center or other providers that accept insurance, they may have gotten hearing aids for free. And although Costco has very competitive pricing, they are not free. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let me see here. I did here give some links to where you can find more information. The FDA has some information for consumers about hearing aids. So does the National Institutes of Deafness, also has information on over-the-counter hearing aids. I also came across a fairly reputable link from the National Council on Aging, which had to do with like, what's the best over-the-counter hearing aid? It was kind of one of those like good housekeeping, like the best over-the-counter hearing aid for somebody on a budget is this one, or the best over-the-counter hearing aid for somebody who goes out to restaurants is this one. So they kind of they narrowed the playing field down a little bit and kind of chose some of the best hearing aids. So that could at least be a starting point for somebody who might be considering over-the-counter hearing aids. And then also a really good resource, a national colleague of mine, Dr. Cliff Olson, he does a series of YouTube videos on lots of different audiology topics. But he might just be, if you're somebody who wants to educate yourself a little bit more about hearing aids and hearing loss and different products, Dr. Cliff Olson he has a YouTube channel and he has some really good reviews. So that might be another resource for you. I see the question in the chat that Mr. Fine asks, will Medicare Part B and Medigap cover hearing aids? So the answer to that is no. Medicare Part B does not cover hearing aids. And as a extension to that, Medigap plans typically only cover gaps in, like, if Medicare paid 80%, they would pick up that additional 20%, but they don't cover things that Medicare doesn't cover. And so, so typically if you have a supplemental insurance to your Medicare, that also would not cover hearing aids typically. Again, I don't want to answer, I don't know your particular insurance. And if you were interested in coming to Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center, we could check your coverage for you. So I don't want to answer for anybody's specific plan, but that's the trend, is that Medicare Part B does not cover, and typically Medigap plans do not either. But Medicare Advantage, which are Part C plans, often have, I can't speak for all of them, but many of them. So for example, in the Cleveland area, a very, very popular one is the Anthem MediBlue plan. That Anthem MediBlue plan does have hearing aid coverage, including some that are at zero out of pocket for the consumer. And they allow you to upgrade where you can get the highest level technology at like the cost that it would cost a distributor like an audiologist to get. So it's like a great deal. So that is that's just one example. United Healthcare, many of them, United Auto Workers, many of the different retirement plans and Medicare Advantage plans have hearing aid benefits. I think that might have been my last slide here. Oh, I just wanted to give our contact information. I guess I didn't give the blurb at the beginning. I typically do, which speaks about Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center. We are a nonprofit. We've been around for 101 years. We have these 4 locations in the greater Cleveland area. I know some of you might be out of state, so it may not pertain, but we, in the Cleveland area, we kind of largely cover the entire area. Including our Westlake office is right on the border of Lorain County. So we're pretty close. I know many of you are out in the Oberlin area. So we're relatively close in that area. So we would be happy to answer any questions. We also have programs available for people who can't afford hearing aids. We have sliding fee scale programs, which we've had for many years, which is why we applaud this legislation, because we are committed to hearing healthcare access for all. And so we've kind of on our own been doing it with grant writing and accepting insurances that other providers might not accept. But we feel that this is a really good, positive legislation. Oops, sorry. Okay, I do see other questions. One of my greatest challenges is excess background noise, restaurants, etc. Are there any deluxe aids that help? That's such a great question. I would say that my answer to that, and in prescription models, is that the #1 complaint, so you're not alone, of hearing aid users and of all people who have ears, including myself who has normal hearing, is in background noise. So background noise is the most challenging condition. And the more money you spend for hearing aid, the better those hearing aids do at reducing background noise. That's kind of my #1 thing. If people, because people say to me, well, what's the difference between a hearing aid that costs $1,000 versus a hearing aid that costs $3,000? And almost always there are different features. They might be able to connect to Bluetooth and stream your phone and do some of those things, but really all of the research and development in the hearing aid world goes into helping people hear better in background noise, because that is where people have the biggest difficulty. So typically in the old adage, you pay for what you get type of philosophy, at least in prescriptive hearing aids, the more expensive hearing aids do a better job of reducing and managing background noise. It's not a magic wand. It is not perfect, but they do better jobs. It will remain to be seen in the over-the-counter if there are products that kind of rise to the top in managing that. Again, I would assume that you will pay for that feature. Your $29 for 2 hearing aids, I will tell you straight up, is just going to be an amplifier making everything louder. But hearing aids that are able to manage, like hearing aids now have become little computer chips. So they take sound and the sound comes into the hearing aid and the hearing aid says, what is this sound? And the hearing aids are able to say, well, this fits the frequency spectrum of speech. So this is likely speech. So I'm going to make it louder versus, oh, this is like this noise that's been droning on and on and on. This is likely the hum of the refrigerator. And so I am not going to amplify that. And so it helps with that. The biggest problem that hearing aids have is that the biggest source of background noise is speech. So you go to a noisy restaurant, and how does the hearing aid know that you want to talk to your husband who's across the table and not hear that really annoying guy at the table next to you who's, just like making lots and lots of noise? How does it know that? And so there is some of the higher end hearing aids, they have directionality so that they can focus on where you're looking, and that's what's being amplified. But then of course it's on you to make sure you're looking at who you want to hear. But there are those advanced features. And those are the type of things that an audiologist or a hearing aid dealer would be able to spend time with you explaining those different features and what might be a good match for your lifestyle and what might be worth paying extra for and what maybe isn't worth it because you don't need that particular feature. In the over-the-counter world, that will be on your own to kind of read the box or read the reviews and figure out why one costs more than the other and what features there might be. And as they're on the market more, you'll see more reviews. I mean, the competitive marketplace will do that, and people will start to figure out what the good products are and which ones aren't. But I hope that answered your question.
Thanks,
Other
Bridget.
questions?
Just a reminder, if you have a question, you can click raise hand at the bottom of the screen and we'd be happy to unmute you and you can verbalize your question, or you can click Q&A or chat at the bottom of the screen and type those questions in. Great information. I appreciate all of this. It really a lot of parallels in my mind to when we talk about wheelchairs, kind of those wheelchairs you could buy at the drugstore versus a custom wheelchair that's ordered by a therapist, or even reading glasses at the drugstore versus prescription lenses with your optometrist. So a lot of similarities there.
I agree with that, Marla. And I also, when you look at the cheater glasses versus these hearing aids, I do think that for many people that over the counters may be a stepping stone. It may be like, hey, I want to give this a try. And you try it and you say, yeah, it turns out I really do hear better with a little bit of amplification, but I'm still struggling in background noise. I'm still struggling in those really high need places. And maybe now that I see a benefit to hearing better and how important that is for my health and well-being, and we have all talks on that, those type of things, how hearing loss intersects with other avenues of health. But once you're kind of bought into that then you may say, well, I'm going to try a prescriptive product because I feel that I believe that I need it. And I'm like that. I had cheater glasses before I went and really did the whole thing. And the doctor's like, yep, you're old now and you need glasses. I wear contacts, but so I think that this may evolve in similar ways to our friends in the optometry world. So some of that though remains to be seen as how this unfolds.
I'm glad you brought up about the insurance, because there are so many managed Medicare benefits that individuals are entitled to, not just when it comes to hearing aids, that they leave on the table and don't look into. So definitely look into your insurance benefits or ask your provider to check your benefits as well. If someone's interested in getting a hearing test, do they look online or to their physician to recommend an audiologist? Do they go to an ENT? Where do they go to get a thorough hearing test?
Yeah, I think that starting with your primary care provider is never a bad idea. And they will likely refer to an audiologist. That would be my guess. Typically what physicians can do in their own office is just a screening. They probably won't do a full test. They may refer you to an audiologist, and that audiologist may be at an independent standing practice, kind of like Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center, or that audiologist may be affiliated with an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Many audiologists do work for ear, nose, and throat doctors, but it would be the audiologist that would be doing the hearing test, not the ear, nose, and throat doctor.
Okay. I don't see any other questions that have come in, so you must have done an amazing job of providing all of the answers. So thank you.
I hope everybody's not asleep. I hope we're not snoring at our keyboards right now. I do appreciate the opportunity to share. We believe in education for people regarding all the different services that we do at Cleveland Hearing Speech Center: speech, audiology, sign language, those type of things. But yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Oh,
got it.
Popping up.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much.
And would an audiologist in an office with an ENT be more expensive?
Such a good question. There are, if you're in the Cleveland area, one of the things that we've seen is that Going to a larger facility, like let's say Cleveland Clinic, and seeing an audiologist at an ENT, you might, for the testing, have some facility charges and have the testing be a little bit more expensive. But it wouldn't necessarily just be because they were with the ENT. I think sometimes larger hospital systems have fees involved that tend to make things more expensive that way. I don't think that the actual hearing aids, if you're talking about hearing aids, would be more expensive. We've seen, at least in the Cleveland area, is that the audiologists, even with an ENT, their hearing aids are competitively priced, but some of their other services might be a little bit more expensive. You might also be able to find hearing testing free of charge. Some providers do that. The hope or thought is that they'll sell a hearing aid. We do that for some, and the reason we do it for some is insurance mandates it. Some of the Medicare Advantage plans require that we do free hearing testing and such. And so we will do that for some people. For some reasons, we do free hearing testing too. So, okay, I've heard that Apple is considering getting into the market, which would make sense given their market share for the smartphones and importance of sound in phones. Have you heard anything about this? Yeah, good question. I see it on my own phone. There's like in the health part of the phone, there's a hearing section. And I have yet to see, I see in their AirPods, they have some sound enhancers, I think, and things like that in the Apple products. But I haven't seen what I would describe as like an over-the-counter hearing aid, in that what I've seen them look like is their AirPods. Those are those little white things that I have a pair, I say the kids, but whatever, lots of people have them. And to me, the disadvantage of that right now is that, to me, those are uncomfortable to wear over periods of time. And I have yet to see Apple show up with something that might be more comfortable to wear all day long. But then again, maybe there are people who are wearing those AirPods all day long anyway, so maybe they think those are comfortable. But I completely agree. I think that Apple is, although there's been some articles that say they're not getting into it, but I don't believe that. I think Apple's going to get into it. I would agree with that.
Lots of appreciation for your talk. And then there's one more question. Kathy receives ads from businesses that offer testing and then prescription aids. Are these trustworthy businesses?
This is really a great question. And I would say that ads, I mean, everybody tries to drive business into their business. And so ads could be one way to do it. And so just because there's an ad that they're sending out saying free hearing test and then trying to sell hearing aids doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. However, I would be a little skeptical if it's like $2.99 special today, buy one, get one. You also get a free, Amazon gift card just for coming in. That type of super like low $2.99. Usually that's a bait and switch. You go in, you think you're going to get that. And now you're walking out the door and you've spent a lot more money. What I would suggest is that ask around in terms of your friends and family who maybe have seen reputable providers. That would be my best guess. It's kind of like going to see a doctor. You might not get the same medicine as your friend, but if they like their doctor, it might be a good starting point. You might not get the same hearing aid. I wouldn't suggest saying, I want the exact same hearing aid as my friend, because it might not be appropriate for you. But I would say that asking around to people who have seen providers that take their time and get to know you and are honest and know what they're doing, that is a good thing, better than the ad, better than the ad. Not that, I mean, it's not necessarily bad, but I'd be a little skeptical.
I agree. Bridget mentioned we have been lucky enough to have Cleveland Hearing and Speech do several other previous presentations for us, and those are available and recorded on our YouTube channel for member access as well. So if you haven't checked those out, please do. And we're always looking for new topics, whether it's about hearing or any other healthy aging topic that you're interested in. Please feel free to reach out to myself, to Sue, to your care coordinator with those suggestions, and we'll work on getting speakers that can address those topics as well. So thank you again, Bridget, for being here today. And we look forward to having Cleveland Hearing and Speech join us again in the near future.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks.